Former President Donald Trump's second impeachment trial continues. His lawyers will attempt to make the case that he should be acquitted of incitement of insurrection. That is the charge that he is facing for the deadly attack on the U.S. Capitol last month. So CBS News political reporter Grace Segers has been covering the trial and is with us now from Washington. So Grace, we've been sort of talking about the strategy that the president's defense may take. We learned yesterday that they wouldn't be using up anywhere near as much time as the prosecution. In fact, they were shortening their arguments. They met with some Republican senators, and they're taking sort of a less is more approach, it seems. What are you expecting to hear from them today?
Well, the thing is, we are expecting the Senate to acquit President Trump. So honestly, the lawyers could talk for 10 minutes and he would still be acquitted. So it's understandable that they would take as little time as possible for this. But we're expected to hear them say that the president's language was not connected to the riot at the Capitol on January 6th, and that the idea that is connected to it would violate his right to free political speech. His lawyers indicated earlier this week that they would argue just because the president said something during a rally, that doesn't mean he was inciting, and to assume that he is inciting violence would be violating his right to free speech. They also may touch on the constitutionality argument, even though the Senate voted 56 to 44 that the trial was constitutional. The president's lawyers may still argue that actually it isn't constitutional and that they should acquit based on that.
So we mentioned that some senators met with the president's legal team. We're talking about Senators Ted Cruz, Mike Lee, and Lindsey Graham. And Ted Cruz basically said, yeah, we met so we could discuss strategy. So I'm going to assume that when it comes to those senators, it's already a done deal. They've already made their decision. Well, what about other Republican senators? What are you hearing? Does it seem like anyone has been swayed by, what people on both sides of the aisle have generally said was a pretty solid argument from the impeachment managers?
So the thing about an impeachment trial is that you need 67 senators to convict. We almost certainly are not going to see 67 senators convict. But that vote on constitutionality I mentioned earlier is really interesting because 6 Republicans voted that it was constitutional to hold a trial, even after the president left office. So those 6 Republicans are going to be the ones we want to watch, and that includes Mitt Romney, Susan Collins, Ben Sasse, but also critically Bill Cassidy, the senator from Louisiana, who had previously voted that holding a trial was unconstitutional, and then he changed his mind a week later and switched to voting that it was constitutional. So I've been in the Senate chamber. I've noticed that he is taking a lot of notes during the arguments from the House impeachment managers, and I think he is definitely going to be one to watch.
Taking notes is good. Doodling, maybe not so good. And we have been hearing reports of, lawmakers doodling, another lawmaker with his feet up in the balcony. I mean, what's the atmosphere like? Lawmakers walking out while arguments are still underway. We, can only see sort of one angle of what's happening in the Senate, but you're seeing the rest. What is the atmosphere like on the Senate floor?
Well, I would say that for the majority of Republicans, they're really kind of over this. They're not really interested anymore in watching it. A couple of days ago, when the House impeachment managers played video from the attack on January 6th, then every senator, including Republicans, appeared to be paying attention because they were all there on the 6th. And that was something that really affected them. But yesterday, I noticed that people were pretty tired and they weren't paying as much attention and kind of wishing that it would be over with. And I think this is especially true for Republicans who already know how they're going to vote. So really, what I heard yesterday was a lot of Republicans saying that this was redundant, that the arguments were repetitive. And I think that's really because they've already made up their mind and they feel as if they didn't really need to hear any more from the House impeachment managers. We'll see how they respond today when it's the president's lawyers talking. And they may be more interested then, but honestly, the sense that I get is that everyone, especially Republicans, kind of just wants this to be over with.
You know, for some of them, if they're not going to behave as impartial jurors, you know, this is an exercise and a waste of time. But there's another audience. It's the American public. They need to see and hear all of this as well. And so that's why you got to go through the whole thing. And they know that. We've heard a few Democrats, you know, told reporters that they didn't really think it was necessary to hear from witnesses. It seems like witnesses would help to reinforce the impeachment manager's argument, but why don't they believe that witnesses are needed?
So the interesting thing about this trial is that the senators who are acting as jurors are also the witnesses to the events of January 6th. They were all there, and the video footage that played by the House impeachment managers a couple of days ago, that really just further reinforced what they experienced on January 6th and added new details. So the idea is that they don't need witnesses because they were the witnesses. They were there. And then also the impeachment managers played some video yesterday of House staffers talking about their experiences on the 6th. They've quoted Capitol Police officers talking about their experiences. So the idea is that they have done enough to present to the senators what occurred on the 6th and what the president said leading up to it. So that's the argument they're making. And honestly, I believe that Republicans will go along with it because, as I said earlier, they're just kind of ready for it to be over.
Right, indeed. Grace, thank you very much for joining us this morning, and thanks for the cat cameo. Your cat made a cameo for us, and we love that. Thanks.
Thank you.